we need to call this out. We need to because anybody who watches the podcast, if you're listening, you can't see it, but if you're watching, you're probably like, why is Francisco sitting on a purple velvet throne? How
Yeah.
did this happen? This is not our typical visual setup. Well,
I broke your chair.
Actually, the chair.
I broke your chair.
Let's just cut to it.
Let's just call it out. I broke your chair. So I sat down and it broke.
Too long.
So
Don't want to listen. Francisco broke it, the chair, when we were setting it. No, to be fair, the chair was already breaking, and anybody was going to push it over the edge, and Francisco just decided to go and do that. So,
but thanks for making me feel a little bit better.
Yeah, it was already there. I told my wife that I was like, this chair, like I was leaning forward all week on the front of the chair because I was trying to ease the pressure on the back
legs. Yeah.
So I got a good ab workout, destroyed my back leaning forward all day.
Yeah, okay.
But I had to just save chair as long as I could. But that couch, I bought that couch at on an auction site. Got a great deal on it, but I was like, is there something about it? I think it's so cool. It's like a cool little accent couch thing. Purple's never been my color, but I just thought that chair looks so cool because I really like the idea of making this office very kind of loungy feeling. And I was like, that chair screams lounge to me. I can see it.
Also, I think this is what dictated the wall behind you, right? Because you're like, exactly. I've got a purple chair, got to make the accent work, right?
So I did it. So so the chair led to the wall, making the wall purple, that wall purple behind me. Because I just thought it would tie it together really nice. And then I was actually, instead of a gray wall like the one behind you, I was thinking like a cool forest, deep green, because I love that again, pub feeling kind of. I guess it's more of a pub feel than a lounge feel, but I like some of the cool lounginess. But one of the best ways. Recommendation, if you are going to paint your room, what I recommend and what I think I heard recommended before is paint get some samples because you can get like a little thing for $5 or whatever of any color, and paint like a good section. Don't just do one strip. Do like a good 3 feet by 4 feet,
pretty decent size,
section of that color, and then see how that looks on the wall and put the stuff against it. So stuff like that. So one of the things I did is I put the couch kind of up against the green that I was going to do, and then I had this gray, and then I had another color. I think it's just another gray type, and I was like, oh, I'm glad I did this because that purple against that green, I had a Joker room all of a sudden. It looked like Batman's Joker. So I was like, that's not good. I think I didn't want
not the vibe you're going for? Not the vibe you're feeling? No?
It looks it looks like sinister and fiendish, in here all of a sudden, as opposed to the pub lounge or something kind of thing. So then I went with the gray, and I definitely think it was a better choice, especially with the brown. These couches. So anyway, that's a long thing, but I just thought it was worth calling out because we're just subtly getting very very. You sitting on a velvet couch is worth mentioning. I mean, frankly, let's cut it there.
I deserve the velvet couch. It's beautiful.
I deserve this velvet couch. But anyway, so we'll see. I just thought it would be, or maybe I shouldn't have mentioned it, and then we just get more ridiculous backgrounds as the show progresses. And we never say anything again.
Just for that. Just look, what else are they going to throw in there?
There's just a giraffe statue behind me, and I'm like, I don't know why I would call that. I don't know why I would mention that. We're not going to say anything about that.
I love it.
So we have less of a specific kind of outline today, but I do think we have two interesting things to talk about. I'd like to hear what you were going with and kind of your whole concept of legacy that you were kind of looking at with the game that you were playing the other day. And then I wanted to kind of circle back on the idea of kind of control and how important it is to understand what you can control and what you can't, and how that I think can kind of help men generally with overall happiness and things. So go ahead. You were saying something when you came over about a topic of legacy. Talk more about that.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I started playing a game called Expedition 33. Right. The game, I don't necessarily know if it directly ties to legacy, but it was interesting. One of the topics they brought up was people dying at a really early age. Right. They die at 33, and so the concept of having kids and bringing kids into a world before that age, it's a tough situation. Do you have kids? Do you trust in humanity to figure this thing out, even though they're going to be dying at the age of 30, right? And so it's kind of like cursing them, but also there's a level of hope to it. And so it was just an interesting concept that kind of came to mind when it was, the main character really wanted to have kids, at least what they were alluding to, right? That they wanted to have kids at some point, but that there are other ways to leave legacy. And it just got me thinking, like, as men, I almost feel like legacy and the idea of leaving something behind or leaving our mark is part of the reason why we exert so much power towards things, right? Where you kind of be domineering and dominant. I think a lot of that is triggered in leaving a lasting legacy and impression, right? So it was just an interesting concept. I thought I'd bring it up, see what your thoughts were on it, see if we can go anywhere. It might not be anything, but it's just an interesting thought.
So what are some of the other ways in you said there's other ways of leaving a legacy that they mentioned kind of or allude to in the game. What are or the story of it? What were those or what's the
Yeah,
idea?
yeah. I don't know if they necessarily apply to us in that same way. In the game, it's they're leading an expedition, right? The idea is they have these expeditioners who go out to save the world, right? And I'm simplifying it heavily, but they go out to save the world. But their whole motto is we're probably not going to save it. We're just going to pave the way for someone else, and we're going to go as far as we can take this thing, leave as much information as we can behind, so that way we can pass the torch to the next generation. And so the main character really much embodies that. He just kind of goes in there, knowing they're going to die, accepts it, and tries to write down as much as he can for his apprentices, which I think is just a weird kind of fun concept.
Very cool. So what do you before because yeah, I mean I have some thoughts on that. I always kind of almost like struggle with what it means to leave a legacy or how that kind of goes. But
Yeah,
what are your as and from your perspective, just because you've been sitting with the idea a little longer,
yeah.
what's kind of your thought or if you were positioning or if you were thinking about yourself and your either need to leave a legacy or how you would leave a legacy or that kind of thing? Where's your head on it?
Yeah, I think it's kind of a heavy question, right? I mean, like, there's one side of me that's like, obviously, I want to leave some kind of legacy, right? It's nice to be remembered, but I also think, like, is making a mark worth it if you're not present for the people that are there, right? Because I think back to like great figures in history, right? You think back to like guys like Winston Churchill or Alexander the Great, right? Their conquests or their achievements, their accomplishments were what they're remembered for, and so we remember them, right? Obviously, they stand in mind, they're standing out in history, but I also wonder, like, how much of their, like, personal life and family life was left behind all of that, right? And so I think I struggle with that a lot, right? There's part of me that's like, obviously, I wanna be great, I wanna do the best I can, I wanna be remembered, right? But also not if it comes at the cost of losing my loved ones or my time with, like, my personal relationship.
Yeah. Yeah, those heroes of the old days or something
Yeah.
is that then their legacy also is subject to the changes of the culture of the future or
Yeah, it's
changes
true.
in the future. Because I mean, I think we culturally are going through a bit of a have been going through a pretty long period of reassessing what legacy some great figures were, like some of the founding fathers and things like
Yeah.
that, like what legacy they leave behind, in a patriotic and world building standpoint. Their legacy was all these types of things of these great accomplishments and we have all these quotes and all these great works that they did, and they were young men when they did it too, which I think is always so
Which is even
crazy.
crazier all the time, right? You look back and I'm like,
Yeah,
"Man, I what have I done with my life?"
like almost every founding father is younger than I was
Yeah,
or
I
am
know.
now, which is crazy. um so that kind of thing, but then obviously that they were in a different time when things like slavery and things like infidelity, and so the personal characteristics as well as just the way that they were adapted to the culture at the time then come into question too. So I think it's also tough to think about. So the only reason I bring that up is because I think it's tough to think about what your legacy might be or what you're building when you almost have no idea of what, let's say, magnifying glass it'll be under
Yeah, that's a good
um,
point. Like,
in the
give it,
future.
100 years from now, and it's like, "Can you believe he used to brush his teeth with regular toothpaste?" I can't think about that, right?
Well, I was thinking
Like,
more
we know the harm of that.
yeah, well, and also, like, what about the figures that are now questionable in a sense of like how they built their legacies, right? like
Yeah.
like if you built your legacy, it's just entertaining to think about. It's not really beyond that. But like, um, you know, I know that some people have issue with, but like if you built a legacy on tobacco or built a legacy
Yeah,
on this kind of thing, where it's kind of detrimental societal, from a society standpoint, it's detrimental in a lot of ways. Then when you look back and let's say your grandchildren or great children are still enjoying the benefits of that, building it that in that way,
right.
then the legacy is kind of a conflicted thing too.
Yeah, it's
I
got a
just
bit of
think
an
that's
asterisk.
interesting, right?
No, it is. Like, you think like Winchester, right? Like, didn't
Right.
that family have, like, a whole thing where, like, they're like, "We're responsible for death," and, like, they felt super bad?
Yeah.
I don't know a ton on it, so I could be wrong, but I think it's
No,
interesting.
The Winchester Mansion in California
Right.
is, in San Jose, is exactly that. His wife went crazy building a house, for her whole life, basically, that was meant to appease the spirits of
At
men
Bend,
who
right.
died at the hands of of the rifles. And it's a very cool house. But yeah, I mean, it
That's
was
a haunting
exactly that.
legacy.
It was a lot of guilt. It was a haunting legacy. So obviously, there's negative ways to hold a legacy. I think there's, the legacy that I mean, when you think about like children, or when you think about your lineage, let's
Sure.
say further out than you'll ever even meet the kids, I think that gets really tough. I think, thinking about how you will be remembered or what you'll be remembered for, by your own children can be, is a better, maybe, like,
Goalpost.
yeah, at least you can be like,
Yeah.
this is the, I can say that, I'm gonna try and impart on in this immediate impact. When there's a lot of different ways, I think, to look at a legacy. I think back to my uncle David, because again, not having
Yeah.
a father figure really in life, but he was one that was really good. And one legacy kind of thing was his love of baseball that he, kind of passed down to me. My family couldn't care about it, didn't care about it outside of him, but he loved baseball. He was a big Chicago Cub fan, which is why I love Chicago Cubs too. And
You
he would
take you
take me to
spring
spring
training
training
games?
games.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it became like a big part of it. So I know that when I watch that, I can definitely feel that connection to the game itself more than any other game. Even though I might have, when I was growing up, I actually loved basketball more and football at various times and too. But I feel definitely more connected to a game, of baseball because of that, like, experience growing up. So I think there's a legacy of not only just baseball and appreciation for that, but there's just something to that kind of level of appreciation
Yeah.
for everything about it. And then when I take my kids or my nephews or something to a spring training game, I feel the same. Like, this is a moment that's important for us to be a part of together. That this is an important experience to have together. And I think you can have a legacy of that kind of thing where, like, because then I can first see my kid, my son, with his kids in the future being like, oh, best thing in the world, spring training games, we go to those. I'm going to bring my kids to that. So I think in a way you are building that kind of legacy of recognizing something that's important and valuable, more so than, it's not just like, oh, we used to do this thing
Yeah.
and it was fun. It's like, actually, it's a meaningful experience with each other.
Yeah, no, I almost think like, we've had previous conversations about like intentionality. It's almost kind of an interesting concept to be like, live my life maybe in a way that's like, hey, if I was looking back and all of my actions or the legacy I'm leaving behinding, kind of like operating under that lens, saying I'm going to do something with the intention of this has to align with the legacy I want to leave behind. And I think that's kind of an interesting way to live your life, right? Like, asking myself, "Oh, does this align with how I want my future children and family to remember me?" Right? I think that's like a really good guidepost for myself if
Yeah,
I'm
it's
operating.
it's a bit morbid to always just be thinking about
Death.
that your constant death, that you'll be remembered one day, and how will this be reflected in when I'm gone. But I mean, um I think it's a good kind of gauge. Actually, something I thought I heard about, or we heard about in church this past week, that I thought was really good too, to talk through, very similar to that idea, was that, um, you know, that your decisions, I'm not going to say it right, but I
Sure.
took this away, is that your decisions in life drive your direction, and your direction determines your destination. And just think logically about that, like, so like, this was specifically because it was Father's Day this past weekend in our time. in terms of when we're recording this podcast. So last weekend was Father's Day, so we were talking about parenthood and stuff like that, and that was one of the things, was that he was saying, that one of the things that new parents will realize when you become a parent, you'll realize this specifically, is that there's a lot of decisions you make about parenting throughout the process. Like, I'm going to
Yeah.
handle this situation in this way, and you may not be consciously saying, like, I'm going to handle this type of decision in this way every time. Well, let's just say, like, for right now, my son was looking for his Legos and he can't find them, and I said, look, buddy, like, it's probably in your playroom. Look for them. Like, they're
Give
not
it a
my,
shot.
they're not
Yeah.
my Legos. They're not this, and so, but I could always handle that decision differently. Like, and there's times, I mean, that's kind of a one that's less significant or
No,
something.
but that has, like, some serious implications, right? I mean, like, the idea is independence that you're trying to instill there, right? So if
Sure.
independence is something you wanna instill in him, then when opportunities like that arise, that maybe your default becomes, "Hey, I wanna instill independence in him, so I want him to be able to look for this thing himself or figure something
Yeah.
out himself," right?
And then there's times when, the hardest thing when you find out you have kids is that when you start having kids, I don't know what age it kicks off, but you become the most interesting person to them, which is really nice, is fun.
Yeah, yeah,
But at the same time, they want to, like, a lot of times kids just want to constantly, like, impress you with stuff,
yeah.
which is so much fun, for especially like aunts and uncles and grandparents love that.
Yeah, 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 it's a great time.
Parents, it gets you're exhausted of like kind of acknowledging
Yeah.
all the stuff that they're doing.
You have a limited amount of attention, right? So I also understand that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Well, and you do. And it is like a constant challenge. I think there was a How I Met Your Mother episode about this. Or there was like this part where they really hit it on the head a lot, where it's like, you will make the right decision at like 999 out of 1,000 times. But that one decision of how you're going to respond to it can sometimes be like, just derail so much of what
Yeah.
you've been building. So, like, I've had instances where, like, my kids are trying to show me something, or they want to do something, or whatever, and like, when they show me something that they did or something, I try and be very focused and be like, "Whoa, look at that! That's really cool. I like this about it. I think you did this really well. Why'd you do it like this?" It's, really like
Yeah,
showing that
go
I'm
into
paying
it, right?
attention, right? But hey, there's also times, a lot of times we're having this. We're trying right now to work with our kids and be like, look, there's times when mom and dad are talking, when we're talking, please don't interrupt us. Like, we're trying to get this. We're trying to talk about something, and when you
Yeah.
come in and you're just like, hey, dad, look at this, it's very much like disrespectful and stuff. So we're trying to really help them with that.
It's like a
Um,
socialization thing. I know exactly what you mean, right? Because when you're a kid, all thoughts are super important, but as you get older, you learn how to taper your thoughts and like, "Ah, this one can wait," or "This one can, take a moment." So
yeah.
I get what you're saying. You're trying to teach them that.
Yeah. So yeah, you wanna just like make sure. Well, also like, that you want to make sure that your kids are like that kind of respect, where they can wait to be acknowledged a little bit in that situation. It does a lot of things, but one thing it does is it always makes sure that the interactions that they're involved in or providing here are going to make them, a welcome presence in the
Yeah.
conversation. And I think that's important for the kids. Otherwise, what'll happen is what happened a few times, which, like I said, these are the times where maybe my response wasn't great, but one of them being, like, my wife and I were getting a little bit of a confrontational
Yeah, heated discussion.
conversation here. Yeah, yeah, just kind of like this isn't feeling right.
Yeah.
We're getting a little irritated with each other, and I'm trying to get through it, or whatever, or even like some of the stuff that we've talked about on the podcast. Maybe it was like something where it's like, I'm emotional about something, nothing to do with her, but it's something at work, something was happening, and I'm getting really upset about it. And I'm trying to talk to her about it, and then they're coming in and trying to talk about something that's like, hey, dad, there's this thing on this show. Like, my son loves to talk about his shows, and it's
Yeah.
like,
Same, buddy. I
and
get it.
yeah, and it was literally like, hey, I look, go. I don't want to hear it right now. Like that, like that kind of response.
Yeah.
Not the greatest response, something like that. But that's the kind of, so it's tricky. You have to give yourself a lot of grace and be
Yeah.
like, look, I'm
That's
not
the
going to
kind of
make
thing
the
you're trying to
decision right
avoid.
every time.
Right.
But the whole idea of, those decisions, if you don't kind of take a minute to assess and be like, I want to handle that better next time, or like what we do after the conversation's over, we go I would go over I've gone over to my son, been like, "Hey, buddy, what do you wanna tell me?" He tells me and then said, "Okay," "Oh,
Oh,
great.
cool,
Thanks.
thanks,
I'm
yeah.
glad you told me. Hey, next time, just again, remember, mom and dad are talking. Can you wait and just make sure that it's okay to interrupt?" And or something like that. Like, can you just maybe or if you see us talking, can you not interrupt because it's kinda rude and I don't wanna snap at you, but I also wanna finish my conversation that we're in the middle with your mom and really try to explain it. So so decisions, right? Like I could have just bailed because I'm still upset. Probably I'm still
Yeah,
upset about the topic I was bringing up, or my wife and I are still in an argument. I could have just bailed and been like, he's fine. He needs to stop
he'll get over it, he'll
He's
get
fine.
through it, yeah,
He needs to stop interrupting. It's
yeah.
his, thing. Or take the time, explain it to him, make sure that we're all good, no hard feelings. And he doesn't, because the sad part is like for him, the direction can then change too, right? He could be like, oh, dad really doesn't want to hear about this
Or he doesn't
anymore.
care,
He
right?
doesn't
Yeah,
care
which is
about
not
this,
what you're trying to
doesn't want to hear
convey,
about it
right.
anymore, doesn't want to hear about it more, doesn't care about it. So I'm not going to bring it up to anymore. And then that's a bummer, like
Yeah, you
to
don't want
lose
that.
out on. And I
Yeah,
lose out on, he loses out on it, feels like he's I mean, and then all sorts of bad things happen. Now again, I don't want any new parents out there or anything like that hearing this and saying it was one decision can just change your life. But decision determines direction. How are you like directionally, like where do you want how, like it's a good reflection of like what direction do I want my parenting to go here? Do I want my kids to feel like it's a legacy thing? Do I want my kids to feel heard, important, supported, all these types of stuff? And what am I doing to influence that? And how are my decisions in various
supporting that.
moments supporting that?
Yeah.
And then because ultimately I want to end up here, them feeling very confident in themselves, very comfortable with our relationship, very heard and open to communicating with us, trusting that kind of stuff, because that's where we're going to end up. But it all starts at the decision. So I think
Yeah,
if your destination is kind of like what you're saying, like the legacy of how whether whatever it is, then let's even say it's like now let's just take it all out of that emotional stuff and say the legacy is building a strong monetary, like financial security. Well, your decisions today,
affect that.
whether or not you buy your $6 coffee or whether or not you do this
I
affects the
invested all the
direction.
crypto. Is that what it is?
That's
I
right.
go crypto
Uh,
out.
There you go, crypto it out. But it affects the direction of your growth toward that destination, right? So it's those that kind of like looking at the it's kind of like bark tree forest. What do they say, right? Like are you in the bark of it? Are you looking at the trees ahead of you, or can you see the whole forest from your perspective? It's kind of like that. But I do like that, and I think that that's how you can build at least like the thing you don't want to have happen is building a legacy that you didn't intend to build,
I think
right?
that's more likely. I think most people end up doing that, right? I don't think they intend to build up a legacy that like, you think of, like, people who, like, think back to their parents and like, "Oh, well, he was an alcoholic," or "He did these things," or, "He didn't really amount to much." Like, that's not the kind of legacy I think they set out to build, but I think you're right. I think it all right now what we're talking about is the end point, right? But, like, the way you get there is by being intentional and stepping into that with the right actions, right? So being intentional with your directions and then supporting that with whatever your next actions are in daily life, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's kinda like you have to have all 3 things in your mind at the same time. Like, I want my kids to feel when they grow up and become adults and strong, successful people in the world, I want them to be strong, successful people in the world. So, my parenting style has to incorporate these things, which means today when I get approached on all these things, I need to act in these ways. Because you can't do those like, you can't do everything. You actually it's not like you can be like, I just made an impact on the destination, but it had nothing to do with my decisions and direction
Yeah,
choices. You have to do it all in the now, but it all amounts to this. And I mean, we got to give ourselves grace. We can always fall off course.
sure.
We may have we may have years of being on the wrong direction. I know we've talked about it before, but it's like the idea of like our kind of limiting beliefs in ourselves, right? And kind of where they stem from. If you ever read The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks, is a really good book. And one of the things he talks about is that we all have these limiting beliefs that have kind of um, made us that cap us in a sense
Right.
of like, well, the reason I can't do this or the reason that I'm stifling myself, self-sabotaging many times myself is because of this. And there's like a few core ones that he talks about that everybody has at least one of. And one of them that I know that, and I think we've talked about this, is the idea that we're actually burdens. My theory is that both of us being kind of in a single parent situation, that kind of lays on us implicitly a lot of times. Like my mom wouldn't be in this situation had it not been for me.
Yeah, also, I mean, my mom had me at 15, so it's kinda hard not to feel like a burden, right? Where you're like,
I
I
mean,
mean,
right?
you're a
So like, hey,
15-year-old, so"
your life would have been,
Yeah,
matter of
world's
factly.
better.
And
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm sure, and I 100% know your mom and my mom would say like, no, it's
Yeah,
great.
definitely not, but
Like you were such a blessing on my life, all that. But yeah, but at the same time, you can't tell me that it wasn't. And it's,
kinda hard,
well,
yeah.
what's crazy about the limiting belief is we are the ones who create it and then enforce it in our own selves. So we're the ones who like come up with this idea. And it's really, my wife and I have talked about these things too. Like the limiting beliefs are, there's a few of them, but one of them that we'll talk that we say is burden. But the other one is like there's a few more that are like, okay, you have to throttle kind of your success among your siblings. Like
Oh,
you don't want to over
shadow
like
someone?
shadow
Yeah.
them. So that's a one that, so like you pull back your own achievements so that you're not overshadowing them. Another one is like that you're, oh, that you kind of, it's like it's almost like you're abandoning your roots. Success is abandoning your roots of who you are.
Almost
So
like a
like,
shame. Yeah.
yeah, so like if you're, let's say you actually, if you grew up with the mindset that money is evil and people who achieve and earn money are bad, because then the only way that you can achieve and earn a lot of money is by being bad and evil and that they're screwing people over, then your idea of growth in your finances is always going to be battling with this conflicting idea that your actual success there is making you a worse person.
Yeah.
And I know people like that 100%.
Yeah, no, I think for me, I definitely have a little bit of something like that going on, right? Where, like, there are times where if I'm achieving monetary success, I have to ask myself, "Am I selling out? Am I still staying true to my values?" It's a
And then
constant
what's
thing that comes
crazy
up, right?
and then what's crazy is then you, if you have that belief that it actually making you a bad person, you will actively work against yourself to keep yourself
Yeah.
stuck. Like, right? I'm not, I can't, I
I
can't.
shouldn't do that because that doesn't align with me, and so
Yeah,
your actions
exactly.
yeah,
So
that's
that's what's,
crazy. I think I gotta
it's
check
a
out that book.
very,
You've mentioned this book a few times to me,
yeah,
and I
it's
think
really
it's
good.
definitely worth a read. What was it called
I
again?
read it, it's called The Big Leap. It's by as a guy's name's Gay Hendricks. It's really good read. But I read it twice. The first time, 2 or 3 times. First time I read it, I thought, "Pretty cool. Good book. Really interesting. Had some good nuggets in there. Totally get it." And I think it was because I was in a place of like where I felt very comfortable and happy and all this kind of stuff. And then the second time I read it, that's when it dawned on me. I was like, "Holy crap! The burden thing nailed it." Like
It
I was like,
resonated, right.
actually, I can't identify with anything in here. And then the burden thing hit me, and I was like, "Oh man, I do feel like I've carried that with me." So tying back to legacy, we're not going down. We're not derailing
No, 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 I
entirely.
love no, but I love that rabbit hole because listen, I'm always a fan of the rabbit holes. You and I have talked about this.
I
That's my
love it too.
favorite part about any podcast or conversation. It's
Going
when you get
down
in
the
these
rabbit
weird
holes.
rabbit holes, you're like, "Where are we going?" I think we put a pin in that one though, because I think that's a great topic in the
Well,
future,
no,
right? We
but
talk about that book or
yes, 100%. Yeah, I think we should just deep dive on the book sometime. But tying it back to legacy, I have this. So if I'm saying that my limiting belief is that I'm kind of a burden to people around me, because it's like, okay, to my mom, but you really extend that to the people around you because you
right.
feel like you are the burden. It has nothing to do with your mom. It's less like you feel like that's the thing.
Yeah.
Um, so if I feel like that's true, I got the impression of that, likely, and again, not to place or misplace blame, but I got that from a sense of what I was seeing around me growing up as a kid, and maybe some of the decisions that my mom or somebody might have placed on me or had like done. Like she was working, my mom was entrepreneur, so she was working, stressed, all that kind of stuff. I mean, there's probably things that I can think back to that I was just like, ooh, she's doing all she can to support me, and it's because of me that she has to do this. And right, and this becomes a thing. So you could say that, again, decision, direction, and destination, and the destination, let's say, being the legacy. The legacy imparted was that that children are burdens to their parents. And and frankly, my mom has said that kind of thing to me, not necessarily meaning it.
Not like you're a burden, but
Not
like
like I was the
children are
burden, but
burdens,
she
right?
did say that generally, and I'm just like, "Well, how am I supposed to interpret that?" Right?
You're
Because
sitting
I
there, I'm a
oh, wait,
child. I'm a
I am
child.
her child, so I don't know how you interpret it otherwise. But, I mean, I can understand, like, it's it's a terrible thing to say. She even knows that, like, it's a terrible thing to, like, say, but it's what she felt, and
Yeah,
so it's what she felt, and it's the belief that she had, because guess what? When she was born, she was the youngest of 4, and she was the youngest of 4, and honestly, by the time she was coming around, my mom even says, like, "My parents were kinda, like, done."
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
That happens,
and
I feel like
so
that happens a lot with the baby. The baby always kinda gets the checked
that's
out
why the baby
parents.
always gets away with everything,
Yeah,
right?
they
That's what
do
they
whatever
say.
they want. Listen,
And
parents are
I don't
tired at
think
this
yeah,
point.
they're tired and everything like that. But I think she interpreted a lot of that too, is like, it's like they're done in a sense of, like, she was the rebellious one. She's all the typical last, kid thing. And I think that she kind of interpreted this burdensome feeling too. So my idea, and actually I think the whole family has that, but
I think it's common. I mean, even in my
it's super
family, I mean,
common.
that was the narrative also, right? Where it's like kids are hard. You can't do stuff with kids. You can't be as
Yeah.
flexible. You can't. I mean, I think that's what led to me and my wife waiting so long also, right? I mean, I think there's some truth in that, but also you've showed us that like that's not always the case. You can still travel, you can still
Yeah.
do things, you can still go
Sure.
out and get stuff done. Sorry, not to take too much away from what you're going with
Good.
there, but I thought about it, so
No, it's great. I think, yeah, and I think, well, but that's like intentional stuff. Like, I think that would it be easier to not do that stuff? Sure, it would be easier
absolutely.
to not travel, not do that kind of stuff. But I think that the only way that children still come across as burdens to you is if you really do think that you're missing out on things because of them, and so you
Yeah.
get resentful. And so I think that it's important to check that in yourself, and check it in yourself, and realize that I have to make sure that I don't resent my kids,
Yeah.
and I need to think about what I want to actually do. Like, it's easy to think like, well, I can't just go out to a bar anytime I want to and blah blah
Yeah,
blah.
yeah, yeah.
But how meaningful is that going to
That
be? I mean,
interaction.
there's a demonstration of freedom, but it's also not super meaningful. But if it's like, I want to go on a great vacation or see this thing, well, okay, well, I would say, like, really prioritize doing that kind of thing as best you can, because your kids want to do that too, and your kids want to have a good relationship with you. Like, there's no kid out there when they're like 4, 5,
Little.
6 years
Yeah.
old that's like, I actually don't care at all about my relationship with my mom and dad. No, they want to have like the best relationship they can
Yeah.
with you. And so so do those kind of things, because I think that the legacy that you're building there is either your kids are burdens and they hold you back, and that's the legacy you're imparting on them. And I realize that 100%. Actually, I remember specifically the moment that I was like, holy crud. Like, I think I'm imparting this burdensome mentality on my kids. Was one time
Yeah.
my son was, I remember I was washing dishes. It was in our old house. I was washing dishes, something like that. And I had just joked. I had made a joke in passing, kind of thing. And it was around when I was reading this book, but I made this just like passing joke of just like, um, you know, like, I'd be doing like,
I'd be on a beach
I'd be
or
on a
yeah.
beach right now. Yeah, if I didn't have you kids right now, I'd be soaking up the sun and on a beach, or I'd be over here. And it was purely just a toss away joke based on what we were talking about at the time, but I said it directly to my son, and I know that there's something about the way that he took it, but I could tell. I was like, holy, like the same realization moment I had when my mom was saying like kids are burdens, that kind of stuff to me, and I had this as an adult. I was like, well, what does that mean to me? Like, how do you,
Right.
what was your view of me growing up, kind of thing? I just thought, oh, what did I just tell my son is the the way the world works about kids and himself directly. Like,
Yeah.
how did I just say he impacts my life? Was it a good thing in a positive way? Was it a negative, bad way of him holding me back and shrinking my life? And I thought, well, so it was a decision moment. It was a moment where I could be like, I had to make decisions, because I don't want that to be his outcome and direction and that
Yeah.
kind of stuff of thinking that kids in general and he himself is a burden to anybody. It's like, it's a different perspective. I think kids add responsibility
For sure.
definitely to your life, and they add structure, and they add and they add but realistically they move you forward so
Yeah,
much
there's
more than they
added
hold you
value there
back.
too that you don't even think
Yeah,
about, right? Like there's I think the daily happiness that you get from them is also huge, right? I think like the meaningful interactions that you get from being important in someone's life is also a big thing too, right?
sure.
And like you
Yeah.
don't hear that kind of thing as often, right? You hear the bad, which is I think maybe why a lot of people internalize that and kind of see that as what parenthood is about, right?
Yeah. Well, and it's always seen as a like a choice
Yeah.
of like, even in movies that, let's say, promote the idea of parenthood, it's always like you have to make a choice. You have to sacrifice this life for this one.
Yeah.
And then there's never just like there's very rarely. I think since like the 80s movie Baby Boom, which I don't even know, you probably have never
Never
seen or
heard of it.
watched.
Nope, never seen.
But I used to love it as a kid because there's like a little baby girl in it, and I think I just as a kid I was like, I don't know, liked it.
It resonated. Yeah.
It's just one of those random movies that your kid just gets sucked into.
Yeah,
Um,
I think a lot of families have that, like the random VHS that they happen to have, right?
yeah,
And they're just
that
like,
was it.
"I'm in, I'm all in."
I'm
Like
I'm
Simple
just
Pride,
watching it.
Lion King, no one's watched that I know of besides like my wife. And so like as a
That's
kid, I
true.
love that. I love that movie. But no, I tried talking about someone else, doesn't exist. But sorry, go ahead, continue.
Doesn't exist, never has been a story. But no, but it's always like a dichotomous choice. Whereas in the Baby Boom movie that just popped in my head is this high powered. It's a similar story, but this high powered working woman. She gets, I think, her sister or somebody like that. Oh God, I'm going to ruin the story.
No, no, you're
Dies or
good.
something tragic happens, and she gets this baby, like this like 18-month-old,
Yeah,
maybe something, maybe 1 year old daughter, and she's like, I just don't have time to. She gets, she has to raise her or something like that. She's like, I don't have time to raise her, all that kind of stuff. But she kind of enjoys the experience of being with her for a couple weeks. But she's just like, I can't do it. Like I'm not cut out for it. It's not my life. She lives in New York City. It's very high powered kind of thing, and her husband, her boyfriend or whatever, her roommate, or they
love
live together,
interest,
I think.
sure,
Yeah, he had no interest in having kids. They're very like highbrow New Yorker kind of
sure.
personas, and so this like kid thing, she's just like totally thrown off by. But I mean, the girl's adorable, so they kind of bond for a little bit. But then really, she's just like, I just can't do it. Like it's because her boss is basically like, you've got to be here. Yeah, this baby thing is like she tries to bring her into the office. Yeah, it's the 80s, so it's not like work
Yeah,
from home's
yeah, they don't have that
an
option.
option, but she's just like, so then anyway, so she decides to give her up for adoption. And as she's leaving the adoption thing and handing off the baby's just sobbing, just like come back, like basically. And so
Bad.
she does. She after she walks out, she turns back, gets the baby, and basically just decides to move to the country, like just like blow up, like,
I'm
well,
going
fine,
right into it. Yep.
I'm moving to the country. And then she ends up like, as she's there, there's, it's sort of funny, it's fairly lighthearted. It's like the predating of like a Hallmark movie because it's always like the same setup. But she starts, she's very good business mind, but she wants to make her daughter's baby food, or this girl, her daughter's adopted daughter's baby food now. And so she starts making it, and then her baby loves it because it's the only thing she eats. And then she starts selling it at a local market, and then she turns it into like a brand,
Yeah.
and she builds it all on her own, but she does it all her own, like her own way. She still makes time for her baby. She never puts her down. So it becomes like a story of how you can actually achieve both things, but you couldn't have achieved, like we were talking about, this predestined idea, but you couldn't have achieved this had you not like had the child and gone
Yeah.
through the thing. So it's a sweet movie. I don't know if it's timeless. It's like Diane
No.
Keaton and stuff,
No, no, no,
but
but
it's a
like
good movie.
that's a great message too,
Yeah.
right? Because I think a lot of people, at least my age and millennials, maybe Gen Z, I think a lot of them they feel like there is this trade-off, right? This
Yeah, for
trade-off of,
sure.
hey, I can have children or I can, work and eat.
Hey, it
And then
is.
there's a reality of that. But I
Yeah.
think you're right. I think there's also like our parents and people in older generations almost were facing similar situations, but were able to persevere and make things work still, right? Not
Yeah.
100% to the same level. I think like there could be a good movie idea premise to reboot 'cause Hollywood loves reboots and remakes, right?
Yeah, and there's probably some more, I guess. It'd be interesting to see if anybody else has some, like, other movies that are, like, can be a good example or stories that are good examples of the fact that you can still actually achieve and achieve, all that kinda success, not only I always say not only in spite of, like, I tell my kids now, like when we talk about, if I bring up to them, because like when my son was born, he, a few months after that is when I left the company I was working for
Yeah,
and totally
yeah.
changed things up. And then when my daughter was born, I really went full on to self, or well,
Be self-employed,
eventually
right?
went self-employed. Um,
But pursuing things that were remote and things that would
exactly.
lead towards
But
that.
I tell them that, like, because actually it was funny, is I told my son that once, and then he's like, "Oh," because I said, "Ah, I just wanted to be home with you more, and so I left this job and all this kind of stuff." And his first initial response was something like, "So, sorry, I kind of like messed things up or whatever." And I was like, "No,
Oh,
no, no, like you did it because of you." And I think we're in a better spot. Not in spite of having kids,
but
but
because of
because
that.
of having kids.
Yeah.
And so I think because it really, I mean, it's a motivating factor. You're definitely more focused on long-term vision, like you just said. A good thing you said there too was like, it feels like there's a difference. Do you build a family and now you have all these other things to think about, or do you just kind of live in the moment and and make some money and eat at good places and go out and drink and
Yeah.
have kind of like more of a fun, like that
Carefree
lifestyle.
lifestyle. Yeah.
But to the point we were talking about, what legacy are you building at that point? You're not necessarily, I mean, realistically, then a legacy that's built on that, where does that where does it continue? I mean, you haven't built one
It
essentially.
ends with you essentially. And then also then I just don't like the idea of that being your value too. Like at least my value, right? Like I don't want my value to be my accomplishments because if that's what I'm measuring myself against, I feel like then you're just constantly chasing something and you're never going to be content, right? And not saying that being content is a good thing or bad thing, but I just think it's very hard to pin that down if you're constantly chasing achievement, which is something we've talked about too in the past. But one thing I wanted to bring up too before we start kind of heading towards the end of this was control. You mentioned control, right?
Mm,
And I wonder how much of control kind of plays a part in this too, right? Because I mean, we talked about it. You can want that end goal legacy, right? Like this is what I want, this is the destination. But if you're not intentional in the beginning, then you're not going to get there. And how much of those intentions versus the moment where we're not intentional really contribute to that end goal legacy, right?
yeah, I know. I think it's good. It's really good to acknowledge where in any situation, I feel like there's, like, I still, I've kind of been keeping up with some stuff on Reddit and trying to kind of get a sense of where the pain spots are for men
Where the boys at?
at this point. Yeah, where the boys at. And a lot of it does come down to this well, one, it comes down to, like you're saying, like, the control aspect, but another aspect of it too is that it seems like we can't seem to get off this idea that the the life you experience today is not the life you'll experience for the rest of
Yeah.
your life. Like especially like the new dads and stuff too. A lot of them freaking out on the new dads type channel. Yeah, within the first 2 weeks to honestly like the first 2 years of just being like, I can't take this. I don't know where this is going on. I don't know how. There's no way I can continue with this kind of thing. Because yeah, there's a lot of hard stuff in the beginning. My wife and I always said it takes about 2 years for us to get like into a
Rude.
groove with a kid,
Yeah.
because your kid's so much more independent. Then they can self entertain. They can eat on their own. They're starting to use. They're starting to get potty trained. So they get
They sleep better.
sleep better. They're
Sleep's
getting
like the
and
one
they're
thing I'm scared of
communicating.
with new parenthood. New parenthood scares me about sleep. I need my
Yeah.
sleep. I'm a cranky boy if I don't get sleep. So the only
Well,
thing I'm worried about.
I think it activates a superpower. You do get better about less sleep. But I do think that you lack so much control in those first 2 years that makes it hard. It's really the kids in control for a lot of it. They're the ones who have the needs, and you have to kind of put your needs aside for a little bit. But I will say, like, but more importantly, I will say that there's just so much that even the experiences we've had, and we've kind of catalog them, as we've like as you going with a job hunt and me going with some
Yeah.
business downturn and like various other things. It's so funny how quickly things can change and often do change.
Shift, yeah.
And yet we continue to think that when we're in those low parts of our lives, like once we hit it, we're just like, our life is so screwed now. Like we're
Yeah.
done. I have no, I have no ability to rebound from this.
Yeah.
We're like the Tiger King. I will never
I
financially
will
recover
never
from this.
financially recover from this. Yeah, look at him now. He's
And
out
then
of
like it,
jail. He's out of jail. I'm assuming he might have financially recovered a little bit.
I mean, and yeah, I mean, he's celebrity essentially, and I mean, even in that exact moment was crazy. I mean, what's funny is that we are not getting inspiration from the Tiger King. I refuse to let this show come into a Tiger King inspiration podcast. But I will say, what's funny is that even in his situation, so in that moment, he was so freaked out because his one of his workers got their
Yeah.
hand bit
Eaten
off
by a
by a
tiger, yeah.
tiger. And he was like, I'm not never going to financially recover from this. And within 2 weeks, that worker was back working for them, has no animus toward anything. I
Didn't sue,
honestly
didn't
think
do
he
the whole
made
thing.
no I think there was almost no
Financial
financial
recourse. Yeah.
downturn for that.
Yeah.
But so he's kind of like a stupid point of that exact thing of like, just first of all, you can't control it. So much stuff like you can't control your entire future. This is actually a really good way to blend these things together now
Right.
because you can't control your entire future uh, or determine your entire future based on where you are right now because your future is built on the decisions and the actions and the control you can take now. Just understanding what can you do now, what can you control, like what can you do today,
What's within my
how
power,
can
right?
what's within your power to control today, because that will determine the direction we go in and the destination we get to. But you can't just be thinking that no matter what your destination is preset because you so many times you can't see what's coming. Like I couldn't see the downturns that we hit that then made all these other things turn. And you
But
had
the
just mentioned too
yeah,
with your new job, like that was nowhere in the
not in the
mix.
cards. You gave 5 years ago, and it was nowhere in the cards. One thing I wanna say, though, is that what I'm hearing is Joe Exotic dream podcast guest. Is that
Oh yeah, that would
add
be
him to the list? I'll write a list down.
that.
Dream podcast
Look,
guest list.
mm, I mean, he would get the views up, but I don't know. I don't
I wanna hear
know.
his story. Come on.
I could. I mean,
I'd like to hear about manhood from Joe Exotic. He's got some ideas.
look, I'm a marketing person. I can spin some stuff. So if he said he was interested in coming on, I would say great, and then we'd get to work on how to
How to
position
spin that? How
this
do we spin that?
interview. How do we get this interview to not be completely unhinged? But hey, we would make it
We'll
work.
talk about the
We'll
future.
talk about it later.
Not to derail
There's
what you
so
where you're
many
going with, because I think you had a really, really good point, but I also wanted to include that because I thought
there's
it's just
so
fun.
many good there's so many other people I guess I'd consider just like as an easier conversation and looking to them for
Sure.
their guidance. I think it would be I think but hey, you know what? He could be a totally different man. I have no idea. I don't know what he's like outside the world. But yeah, but I think there's a lot of assurance I think in realizing that there's actually I even think that in situations where we're feeling the worst is often the situations where we feel like we have no control over anything. And that's where like the other guy podcasts out there are talking about like go work out, get some, make an exercise
Yeah.
regimen, make your bed in the morning, do this kind of like do
Accomplished.
these things,
Yeah.
accomplish something that's accomplishable, get structure in your life, get things that you can control, because if you feel like things are spiraling out of control and that you're just overwhelmed and everything seems unfair and everything seems like it's happening to you and you have no ability to stop it, control it, or anything, then do something that you can get control of, even if
Yeah.
it's making up something new. Take control of something because that will make you feel like you're the one, kind of setting the course. Actually, one thing I had even heard too recently was like, um, one of the things I know that we all do is in the morning, and I was thinking about trying this out. Like, I was thinking about trying honestly getting a new alarm clock
Right.
and not using my phone. because
Like the gentle waking ones?
any alarm clock, anything else. But the
Sure,
reason
yeah.
being was because the first thing you do with your when you get your alarm and you do it and you look at your phone and all your notifications come up, we immediately start looking and seeing what notifications we have, and it's almost like we're letting the we are not determining how we start or set our day. We are now letting everything else and all the world that's been happening while we've been asleep just like cloud us and fill us up with like, here's what you need to know and
That
here's all the
also
things that are
overwhelms
happening.
me. Yeah, it
Yeah.
also overwhelms the crap out of me. Like, when I wake up to a million, like, notifications, I just most of the time, I just put it all down. I'm like, "Alright, well, gonna go and not look at that for a little while." It makes you very
Which
avoidant to the world.
it does. And it's but it already had its effect because you know they're
Yeah,
there and you
yeah,
know that that's coming. And I think it is, we set the alarm and then we look at the notifications and it becomes this like the world and all of its stuff,
yeah,
well, negative, positive, or tactical or whatever, but it is now guiding our day and it's guiding our morning and it's impacted us here. Whereas, you know, what would it be like if you just woke up and you just got to like, I'm going to start my day this way. Like I'm going to lay here for a little bit or something like that. I'm going to go brush my teeth. No external factors weighing in on myself yet, anything like that. I'm going to go down, I'm going to make coffee, I'm going to take the first couple
that's what I did
sips.
yesterday. Honestly, that is
Yeah,
exactly what I did. Though that was, like, my favorite day. I didn't play on my phone. I literally woke up, hit stop, went to the bathroom, drank some coffee, smoked a little bit, hung out. It was amazing. It was the best morning I've had in a long time. I meditated. It was nice. It was
that's
really,
great.
really nice, and it was like a good start to a day off because we had the day off
Yeah,
yesterday. So, yeah,
yeah.
it's a world of difference, and it made me feel better.
Yeah, and it gets you in control of your day. Like we don't realize that just even the simple things of like looking at the notification on your phone, seeing that there's things that you need to do that you are unaware of or something like that. Now, who's in control then all of a sudden? Like, where's your control? Your control is now guided by your phone and the people who are on the other side of it who are dictating it versus you setting the things up. Like the thing that I do love about, self-employment, especially like in the way that I've set it up for myself is that, and the way that the universe kind of set things up through losing a couple accounts and stuff
Yeah,
is that no, I'm going to start my day when I'm ready to start my day because there's usually nothing like emergency, urgent things that I need to, address immediately. And so when it's like if I'm ready at 7:30 or 8, I'm going to get going then. But if I'm not ready until 10 or 10:30 or sometimes 11 or
yeah,
whatever, then that's when I'm going to get going. And then I'm going to open things up and it's going to be then because everybody knows that I'm their external partner. I don't work for them. It's a
right,
thing. So I think it's a better couching of where we sit and but it's crazy is that sometimes I guess I probably feel like I know that one of my bad habits is that when times are busy, I want them to not be as busy.
right.
And then when times are not busy, I get anxious.
Yeah, it's the feast or famine mentality, right? Like, we sometimes get, like, trapped in that where we're like, "Oh, well, there's too much going on. It's a feast, but now I'm overwhelmed," right?
Yes.
But then in the famine times, you're like, "Well, how come the bell's not ringing? What's going on here? What's happening?"
It's something like that. It's definitely like an unhealthy, like I can't be fully satisfied in one spot or the other. But
Balance, right? I mean, it always comes down to balance a lot of
it's
times.
tricky. Yeah.
One thing I did wanna touch on really quick, because I know you mentioned a lot of the other guy podcasts, and one thing that I do agree with a lot of that. I do think setting actions and being intentional and being in control of your day, that's a huge part of it, right? Working out, feeling better. I think the part that a lot of those podcasts and people leave out, and the reason why I think it was important for us to do a podcast, is being intentional about talking with other guys or other people just in general, right? I think a lot of those men-based, influencers and creators, they leave out the part where you need a community, where you need other people to soundboard off of and to check in with. I think when we kind of live in these isolated bubbles of TikTok and Instagram and our social media feeds, you take away the part that's human, which is like the interactions piece of it. And I think that's the piece that I think this really provides for me. I'm hoping you too, but I think also like my other friends, right? I think you need those moments to base your opinions and think about in order to feel better and to kind of develop.
Yeah, I do agree. I think it's definitely a something. It's almost like I agree with you, but it's almost like, now I'm thinking about those guy podcast type
Yeah.
that genre, and I think that 100% you're right, and that uh, it's almost like we're in a spot where we know how to, the guys and those podcasts know how to do all those other things, but since we don't open up and talk to each other a lot, there's no real good prescription for it. It's like,
Yeah.
if you want to listen to a guy podcast about how to start your morning off right, I got 45. There's
4 or 5
45 of
videos.
these, and there's like a checklist, there's a program, there's a
Yeah.
subscription you can get on, there's all this kind of stuff. You want to workout regimens for days, like all these different things.
Yeah.
You want to stack out. You want to take control of your life this way.
I
Oh, you
check my
want to do
links.
your
Yeah.
you want to do a carnivore diet, you want to do a diet this way, you want to do a fast, you want to do this, bam, bam, bam. But it's like, okay, well, how do I talk to another guy about like the emotional crap I'm going through with this?
Yeah, there's no subscription
Bro,
to
you
that.
gotta go work out, you gotta hit the gym, you gotta do this. Like, it's just like, it's like not found content. And so I think that's, yeah, I mean, maybe we need to
That's
hit
it.
it with some structure.
There have been some TikToks that I've seen. Like there's this one guy that I think I forget what his name was. He's a creator, but he talks about how his friends and him have a scheduled Zoom time every week.
Oh, that's
And
cool.
they just show up and they just hang out. They don't really do anything, but that I think creates like something like that. I think if you schedule your time, which is lame, nobody wants to schedule all of their time for everything, right? But I think if you are intentional, right back to what
Yeah.
we are talking about, and you're thinking about like, okay, if this is a value of mine and I want to build this, and mental health is important to me, and being feeling good about myself is an important thing. I think you incorporate that, right? You
Yeah.
schedule time for something like that. I think another one they're talking about too that I thought was cool was like weekend updates. So weekly they'll leave voice notes of just an update of what their week was like. So that way you can keep up with your other dudes and you know what they're going through. They're up for
Oh, that's
promotion
cool.
or they're looking into a new video game that they're really excited about, right? Those sort of things that you can do and still maintain those relationships with, which is interesting.
Yeah. One thing that I had heard, aside from those two, is like some. I really wish I was better at remembering like where I would get all this content from, but you get so much of it that it's like
Oh, we're
there's no way I'll
consumers.
remember this. But it was like the need to, the ability, like working with your guy friends or working with guys to just be better about reaching out for help. And then again, I think we just have a tendency to, even with each other, be like I would, man, but I'm busy. I don't have a lot of time. Like, if somebody reach out to you or something like that, just be like, well, what are you thinking? And you're like, okay, well, he probably wants to talk, so we got to go. We're gonna do happy hour. When can
Yeah.
I do
I
happy
got to
hour?
schedule a
Or when
time
can
for
I go
that, right?
coffee or something like that? And it's about getting better at picking up the phone, and then there was this, the guy mentioning it said that they use this because apparently, like, all it takes neurologically or psychologically or whatever is 7 minutes with somebody to feel like there's a connection, and they feel like you've got a connection with somebody. So which so then basically what they say is to each other is they'll drop a text to each other and just be like, bro, you got 7 minutes? And then they know that it's like, I need to talk to you now.
And it's a
And
dedicated
it's
time.
7 minutes of
Yeah.
time of me just being like, hey man, this stuff hit me hard or
I
whatever.
can
And
give 7 minutes to almost anything for the most part, right? Like that's not a hard ask, right? It's like 7 minutes. I have 7 minutes. If we're legitimate about this time frame, then I'm in. That's
yeah,
wonderful.
and you can fit it into any time. You'd be like, oh, look, hey man, like, even if your day is stacked, you can be like, that meeting ends early all the time. So we can do it.
I
How
can
about I
jump
do it
into
right
that.
here?
Yeah.
Hey, can I talk to you? Like, yeah, let me call you in 15 minutes. Are you free in this time or something like that? And you give 7 minutes of time to feel connected to each other. Be like, hey, I'm here for you. Let me know. And then, yeah, I guess if you want to get happy hour or something, but at least now you know what's going on. It's not like you're waiting for like 2 weeks to when you both are
Yeah.
free to then talk about it. At which point the guy friggin' could
he
be in a
forgot about it,
worse
he's no longer
spot.
going through it. Yeah, yeah, or he's
He either could forget about it and he's not going to, or suppressed it enough. Like
yeah,
that's what I think some of the
that's
workout stuff is, where he's
yeah,
just like the workout stuff is like I feel like sometimes we deflect our need to talk about stuff by getting busy, which I understand is a man thing to do. Like productivity, like I even said it. It's like, hey, get control of something, which I think is important. Like get control of something, go to work out, go do this stuff, and because that'll help you. But you still got to get that issue ironed out. Like you can't just let
yeah,
it sit, and you can't let the workout become a way to just suppress that
yeah,
emotion. Right? You're not just like I just don't subscribe to the belief that you suppress the these other things will make you feel better, and then you don't have to talk about them. That's
yeah.
ridiculous.
No, I agree 100%.
But I think that's
And
what
I
kind of what we do, right? Like, and
yeah.
then when I succeed, when I achieve, like, let's say my business turns around or I win some new business, I still should probably talk about what that was like.
We're less likely also, we're less likely part of the reason why I don't wanna do that too is, again, comes back to your book that you were talking about, right? I don't wanna overshadow achievements either, right? I'm not trying to brag about my life and be like, "Oh, look at me, guys, I'm the best," right? I think I have to get better with that too. So it's interesting. I think I'm gonna have to check
Yeah,
out that book. Real quick though, I do have to use the restroom. So this might be a good ad break or a good
yeah.
little moment break. Okay,
We
cool.
could probably wrap it up anyways. But yeah, all good, man.
Sweet. I'm gonna run to the restroom really quick.
All right.
Nice.
But yeah, I think that I really like the 7 minute idea because I could see you reaching out to people. It's funny because you can do it with kind of like anybody. I feel like that's just
Yeah,
not a lot of demand of time. And then you can set it as a phone call. You could do it. It would even be interesting to see, like obviously these podcasts have been hour 20 minute something like that.
yeah.
But it would even be interesting to see and try one kind of thing if we're in a spot that we want to talk some stuff through or whatever, and just see what 7 minutes of conversation could
How
get
much you could
through
actually get through, right?
of being like, hey, so I'm in this spot where this is happening, this is happening, and then we're doing that, and then just see how 7 minutes of chat could go through or something like that. That's just an example, and maybe be like, here's a 7 minute conversation we're working through, because it does seem like now that we're talking, there's a gap of almost like how to have. Actually, one of the most successful videos successful shorts I posted the other day for us for this channel to help promote it a little bit was the struggle with communication. We were talking about communicating
Yeah.
between with our wives and stuff like that. And uh, it was like, this it was when you're in that spot where you don't want to talk about it and that kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then the point that we were making was like sometimes I just need to be like, look, it's almost like first of all, it's nothing to do with you, nothing to do with this. This thing happened and it's an issue I'm just dealing with and working through. But if you don't say any of that, like she thinks it's about her, or she thinks you're upset with
Yeah,
her, or you're
there's a
upset
lash
with
out.
kids, or something, or she could think the worst thing in the world has happened or whatever, right? Like it could be anything. And so just setting that, like communicating that, like, hey, this is, I'm sorry, nothing to do with you, nothing to do with the kids. So the title of it was something like men struggle with communicating.
Hey,
And
look,
I think
clickbaity,
that's
but
what,
I'm in. I'm in. Hey, clickbait titles, get it.
excuse me, because it's just like it's like the most obvious thing in the world. But I do think that it would be kind of cool to really come to it with like a, well, how do guys, how can we talk together about this kind of stuff in a way that's conducive to just kind of how we are. And then how do we also talked about that we need men, as men, we rarely do we actually need compassion. Well, we need compassion, but rarely do we need like that loving support and the
Yeah,
holding of this kind of thing. It's more like, I hear where you're at, man, but I gotta tell you, it's not gonna last. You will. I understand that it sucks right now, but life, works itself out. This sounds like you may be, hey, man, you may be worrying about something that hasn't even happened yet. So
yeah.
until it happens, don't stress about it.
Yeah,
Don't
sometimes you
take
need someone
yourself out of it.
to make some sense of it, right? And to be like, "Hey, man,
Yeah.
it's gonna be okay. Like, it's not the end of the world here. We're still
And
moving."
also like real help you realize that, like, hey, this isn't happening today, don't worry about this right now. You don't want to miss out on this experience that you're having right now. Like, hey, be there for your kids, be there with your wife. Maybe if it, hey, like I had talked to at church to somebody the other day, and I was just like, I have the benefit of the universe and God being really effective in my life. I don't get nudges, I get like the rug pulled out from under
Yeah.
me. It's like, hey, you want to change directions? Great. Boom, gone, over. So it's like I want to spend more time with my kids and have a more present home experience and that kind of stuff. Great. You need to ditch your biggest clients, I guess. And
Yeah.
that's what happened. And so, um, but I could definitely still be in a place of like, uh, insecurity and sadness and frustration and feeling hurt about a lot of stuff. But I could also choose to be in a place where it's like, well, what's great is I get to go swimming with my kids
Yeah.
at 3 in the afternoon, and I get to go do this in the, I get to go do this. And hey, when we're planning for a trip out of town, I can go take my kids to Walmart
Yeah.
and buy a crap load of snacks just for the trip, and it's gonna be great. I don't have to
Okay.
worry about the thing. That's what I wanted, right? This is what you wanted, and you made all the decisions, you made your direction, and now you're in the place that you wanted. And if you choose not to enjoy it because you wanted to be over here based on this metric of wealth or whatever,
That's yeah.
then it's like you seem conflicted and you don't seem like you are who you say you want to be,
Yeah.
you know?
No, no, no. I think it's very interesting, and I do like this idea that you're talking about too, because you're right, guys. It's something I've heard before is that like guys are more solution minded, right? And like women are a little bit more like they just want to be acknowledged, right?
Sure.
Like they want acknowledgement and like compassion, right? And of course there's exceptions to the rules, but I think that's like maybe that's the importance of like other men communicating with other men. We're solution minded, right? So like me just telling you, that's being heard. You've heard what I've said, but by being solution minded, that tells me that you're going the one step ahead and saying like, well, let's put this in perspective. This is how we're going to fix this. Or long story or long term, that's not that bad because of this
Sure.
reason, right? So I think that's why it's important for other guys to talk to other
Or
guys.
and definitely helping you look at like what do we need to worry about now, what can you affect to now, because like, so if you're worried about how this affects your future and all this kind of stuff, I hear that, it's super valid, I understand those are the fears we all have till we wreck things. But one, I just can't say with certainty that you've done anything to really destroy the future.
Yeah.
What I can say is that this thing right here could, let's see what we can do with this, let's see
Yeah.
how
What
we
are
can
your
fix
options here?
this.
What can we
Yeah,
what can we mess around
right.
with, right? Yeah.
And then let's focus our efforts here. And then we'll worry about that future in a minute, because once everything's resolved, it seems like we've got no concerns about the future. And it's like, well, how'd that happen? You just told me you ruined it. How did you just, and like I
Totally.
said on our last episode, we never circle back and be like, gosh, sometimes when I'm in situations where things are in bad states, I tend to extend this my now into the future and forever, and that's my life, and I should stop doing that and maybe not be so worried about how every single thing is going to change the course forever, because there's just so much stuff that goes on during your life, that and we over exaggerate what we can. Tony Robbins says we over exaggerate what we think we can do in a year, and we underestimate what we can actually
Do
get done
today.
in 10 years,
Yeah.
because like 10 years of my life, like I had no kids. I like the course of everything was so different.
Yeah.
But we think that like, well, this year, starting on January 1st, by December 31st, I'm gonna have this. I'm gonna do all these things, and now I'm gonna do this. And it's like, why narrow yourself to just that time? You don't know what's gonna pivot. You don't know. I mean, frankly, for me, when I set out those big declarations, it means like losing everything for a minute, because the direction I was living at the time is not going to accomplish that goal. I needed new stuff. And so I look at it that as a very fortunate experience in my life of being like, God or the universe, very quick to correct and very quick to like get me on a direction that I can take. But then I've built up, I guess, enough resilience to handle the like suckiness of that rotation.
Yeah. Yeah.
But with friends like you, and luckily support a family and stuff like that, but friends like you, I get to be like, look, this is
This is the stuff.
this sucks, this sucks, got to do all this stuff, really sucks, and then we get to work together and fix it. But yeah, I think there's a lot to be worked through together,
Yeah.
and hopefully this is kind of helping start that kind of thing.
Maybe that gives us some more direction to that towards that too, because like you mentioned, there is no guidebook, there's no subscription model to human communication, right? And also like meaningful human communication for that point, right? Like what do you measure that by? So maybe that's something we work on. Maybe that's like something we can kind of figure out ourselves, right? Like a
Mhm.
guidebook or a guide to reaching out to other guys.
Yeah, or like how to support another guy going
Yeah.
through stuff, because you don't really get that either too. It's kind of it's almost like we
Yeah, what's your answer, right? Like, he's
we
telling
would
you stuff, you're
rather
like, "Oh,
it we're so uncomfortable a lot of times with like the emotional situations that we kind of like slink back
and avoid them."
and we're
Yeah,
like, well,
absolutely.
like I don't know what to tell you, man, and we kind of like recoil a little bit. And we're just like,
That sucks.
that's that. So you tell me how I can help. And it's like instead, like I think this is what's great to have somebody help is to actually like have them help you. Be like if you're in again, it's taking that control again and giving them something to win at and succeed at. It's like, hey, it looks like you could use a win. Is there a way I can get you a win and think about it and be like, hey, here's what I need from you. Here's what I could use from you. Here's where I
Yeah.
feel like, and I think that's
Makes them feel
helpful.
useful, makes them feel worthy.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
anyway, that's
cool.
that's I think that's good. We covered the legacy, how to what a legacy means, and establishing that. We tied it to the need to kind of get a control on things and how your decisions today can impact your where you end up in the legacy that you make for everybody.
And then we touched
Um,
on the legacy of our podcast. What we want, right? We
yeah,
wanna
that's
teach other
true.
men
Where
how to
this
build those relationships and how to support each other.
it's a good defining purpose type thing.
Yeah.
And then we also peppered in Tiger King and
Joe
various
Exotic.
things like that. Joe Exotic and which could be like a little, we're gonna weave that into every conversation, I'm sure at some
Just until
point.
we slowly get him. Is that the plan?
Yep.
Okay, deal.
Yep. I like it. All right. Cool. Thanks everybody. Thank you, Francisco.
See ya.